My name is Vincent Chidindo Asogwa. I'm here to present a lecture titled Research Baptism, Methodology, Volume 1. Why research baptism? It is expected that at the end of this lecture, if you listen to it attentively, you would be purified and initiated into the experts of research methodology, especially in education and social sciences. We are going to deal with methodology. Volume 1, because this will center more on quantitative study, though we are going to be touching other aspects. You may listen to it once, twice, 3 times, thrice or more, depending on your research experience, your research background, your research knowledge. However, we would wish you like this video, you subscribe, and as well share for others to benefit. It doesn't matter how much experience you have in a research methodology. This is born out of studies from different 5 universities or more. Now, what is research methodology? Why is it even important for the first time? You bear with me that research methodology is the structured framework, the blueprint that guides your study. It is that outline that guides how you conduct your study. And this encompasses all the principles you are going to apply, the procedures, the tools that you are going to use for data collection, analysis, and interpretation of your data to come out with findings. Why is it important in a study? A well-defined methodology ensures that your research will be devoid of bias and ensure consistency across the study. You know, research methodology, which is chapter 3 mainly in our research project, is at the center of the project. So, because research is a systematic study, it connects chapter 1, chapter 2 to chapter 3, to chapter 4 and 5. So it is at the center. So it ensures that there is consistency from chapter 1 to the last aspect of your research study. It also allows others to repeat your study and verify your results if they wish to. That's why we say research should be replicated. It should be replicable. So a well-defined methodology will also ensure that your findings are accurate and trustworthy. That is, they are valid and they are reliable even over time and in different aspects or different areas or context. It is the methodology that will connect your practice to theory. strengthening your academic consistency. And it is the methodology that you follow will convince the readers, the audience, of the authenticity of your findings to inform policies, practices, and even further research. Having said so, we will now take you to different components or aspects of methodology depending on your university. It could be made up of different 10 components or more. It all depends on your university. Now, in most of our projects, from undergraduate to the PhD level, the first aspect of your methodology supposed to be area of the study, and that is what it should be. Now, if you want to write about the area of the study, what are the things you should include so that people don't ask questions? When you come to the area of the study, you need to mention the name of the area. If there are institutions that you want to study, or parastatals or places, you as well mention them. If there are categories or strata, you mention them as well. You need to include the position of that area of the study. That is the boundaries of the area of the study. You are describing the area for someone who does not know it. And if you want to do that, ensure that you do it systematically. Remember, research is a systematic investigation. So anything you do should be systematically done. Don't forget that. Now, we are saying that you mention the positions and the boundaries. If you want to describe the boundaries, do it systematically. You can do it clockwise or anti-clockwise. If you start from the east, you will not jump to the west. You either take right or you take left. So you begin from the east, either south, west, and north, or you can begin from east, north, west, and south. Do not forget that. Very important. Because it's assumed that you are driving someone using a compass. If you have this, how do you move around the area? Now, you need to mention the landmass if you have it. And do not forget to mention specific characteristics or features of that particular area that makes it conducive for your study. That is the why that area. Why this area? Why not another area? Nobody asks you that question, but it has to be in this your area of the study. One sentence could strike out that, but very important that you answer that question. Why this area? I remember my external examiner during my PhD asking me why my study in my area. Why do you conduct this study in this area? I remember that. So after saying why, this is not common in most of our research work. The map of the place where you are studying. Try to include the map in your study. Very, very important. If your school allows it, if they do not, leave it. But if you are writing for publications. It's very important you include it so that people can understand. These are the things that you must include in the area of the study, and nobody will ask you more questions. The next component is research methods. Research method. In this research method, there are 3 questions that you must answer. Very, very important. What, why, and how. What, why, and how. Bear it in mind that whenever you pick any research method, you ask, what is that research method? Why is this research method important or relevant to your study? And how can you apply it? Now, in most cases, we jump to research design without mentioning the research method. But I wouldn't want us just to jump to research method. I want us to start from research philosophy. I told you that this is born out of experience from different universities. Now, in Southern Africa, you cannot write research method without including research philosophy. This is not common in West Africa. But this is why it is called research baptism, so that you will be well grounded in research methodology. So it doesn't matter whether your area uses it or not. You need to be an expert, a doyen in this field. You should be able to know. You start with the research philosophy, which is the philosophical assumptions, the belief, your belief, what you actually believe, the way you actually believe that knowledge could be studied or knowledge could be acquired or knowledge could be obtained. And we do not want to start from research paradigms where we are going to tell you about the ontology and the epistemology. No. We want to make it very simple by going straight to the research philosophy. And in this case, we have 3, just 3. And that the first one is positivism, being objective in obtaining information, in studying knowledge, in studying things. You get information through measuring facts that are known, that can be seen, that can be felt. We also talk of interpretivism. The interpretivism is subjective in nature. It's talking about the subjective understanding of meanings, the lived experiences. It is contextual and it is, in fact, interpretative. People interpret things the way they understand it, the way they perceive it. They give you such information. So knowledge could be obtained through that means. Do you believe so? If that is your belief in this study, you declare it and why it fits your study. Then the third one is pragmatism, which focuses on the practical solution. How do you think that knowledge is obtained or knowledge is felt or knowledge is known and knowledge is applied? Do you believe that knowledge is only known when they are applied? Do you interpret knowledge based on what it can solve, the problem it can solve? Otherwise, you can mix both positivism approach and interpretivism approach or philosophy. Whichever one you want to apply, why you want to apply it, why it is most appropriate for your study must be mentioned. Now, this will lead us to the research approach, your perspective, your viewpoints. how you are going to extract the information from what you are studying. If you are going to extract information based on quantitative data, that is deductive approach. We call it deductive research approach. If you are going to make inference from your study, then you are talking of qualitative data that you are going to collect. And that is inductive approach. A situation whereby you are going to combine the theory and the data interaction, you are now talking of the research, abductive research approach. You are combining the two. These are the things you need to state. And you will find out that if you understand all these things, when you declare your research philosophy, that will guide your research approach. And that will certainly move you to your research method. And now we are going to research method. Research method, you are referring to the procedures, the techniques that you are going to apply. Are you going to apply quantitative method, whereby you look at information, you obtain information quantitatively, measurably, you can measure it? Or are you going to get it from lived experiences qualitatively? Or are you going to mix them now? Actually, we just have two, the quantitative and the qualitative. But these days, because we are creating from blending the two, we call it mixed method. So are you going to mix both information to see it from two sides of the coin, to see it from two perspectives, which is what most research now are encouraging? Because if you get it from one side quantitatively, you may be missing some facts or even the reason why such things are happening. So it is very important you can combine them where possible. But where you are not an expert, you better use the one that you can get good results. Now, this your research method will determine your research design. These things, you may not understand them properly if you do not take down note, number one. If you also do not understand it, I will encourage you to read or study research unions. Only that in research unions, there is nothing like research design. It's only strategy. But I want you to understand that what research union called strategy is design. And what is research design? That is what we commonly know. It is the strategy, the specific techniques, the specific plan or outline you are going to apply in conducting your study. This is where we are going to have different designs. Even if you are using mixed method, mixed method under research method, when you come to the design that you are going to apply to mixed method, you see that there are different designs. When we talk about the exploratory research mixed method, exploratory mixed method, or it can be concurrent, otherwise parallel mixed method. So these are designs of mixed method. Why mixed method is a research method. So it is from the research method that you get your research design, where you get the descriptive research design, the correlational research design, the quasi-experimental ex post facto research design, the randomized, if you are going to experimental, pure experimental, randomized block design, factorial block design, and rest of them. Then you also have case studies. These are the things we call research designs. So I want us to understand when we are moving, we move from the research, let's leave paradigm now, research philosophy, from research philosophy to research approach, where the research philosophy, we talk of the positivism, the interpretivism, and the pragmatism. Then you move to the research approach, where you have the deductive and the inductive. Then from the research approach, you move to the research method, where you have the quantitative, the qualitative, or mixed method. Then from the method, you now move to the research design. These are very important. We have explained to you what research design is as a blueprint or strategy or plan or outline of your study, or what you want to do, of how you are going to conduct your study. And we have mentioned different types of research design. The descriptive research design, just trying to describe the characteristics of the phenomenon or the items or the subjects you are studying. Then the correlational, trying to examine the relationship, the influence from one aspect to the other. Then the experimental, where you want to establish the cause and effect of whatever is happening. In that case, you may have control groups. Then from here, if it is in education, you are going to have a quasi, that is semi. It is not completely experimental because there are variables you cannot control. So semi is partial experimental. Then we have the case study, where you study some things in depth. This could take time. It could be in terms of time. It could be in terms of the things that are involved, many things, the coverage that are there. We also look at the longitudinal design, tracking changes over time. And we have the cross-sectional, that is just the snapshot at a single time. You just take it there without trying to repeat it over time. If it is rainy season that you are studying, if it is dry season, does it repeat itself after some time? So these are types of research design. When you leave from research design, the next thing is population of your study, where you clarify who and what you are studying. In the population, what you should include is the population of your study. And population is always a figure. Let us not make this mistake. Let us not continue to make this mistake. When you say a population of the study, you can check your dictionary. You see that it is always stated there. A population of a country is, they mention it specifically. So when you say this is your population of the study, it's very important you mention it. If you are studying people, know that you are studying people. If you are studying schools or organizations or events or documents, know exactly what is your population. Sometimes people confuse themselves. Maybe when you want to study students, you begin to say that your population is school. No, your population is not the school, it is the student. We have what is called accessible population. Those people that will be realistically available for you to access them. If it's possible, you mention them where possible. Remember, we are talking of quantitative study. If it is qualitative study, mentioning, being specific on the population may not be a problem. Note this. The exact figure of the population, if available, and the component, the composition of that. If you want to study, let's say, teachers, you mention the teachers. If you have categorized them into male and female, or experienced and inexperienced, or trained and untrained, you state those components. Make sure that the components you are stating is in line with your hypothesis. Supposing you are trying to test the difference in any of the groups. Make sure that those components is in line with the hypothesis you stated in chapter 1. That's why we say that research is interwoven, and chapter 3 is there to connect you from chapter 1, 2 to 4 and 5, and even 6 in some projects that have chapter 6. After mentioning the composition, you mention the source of the data. Where did you get that data? Very important. After population, you go to the sample and sampling techniques. In our projects, those who put it there they did not make any mistake. They know what they are talking, and they know what they are writing. Many schools have approved sample and sampling technique. It's not a mistake. It's an intentional act, and that describes to you what you and how you write it. So first of all, you need to state what is the sample size of your study. From the population, you get your sample size. If you did not mention the specific population, that might be difficult for you. That might be completely difficult for you, unless you are using another method, which they normally use in sciences. We will not confuse you with that. Now, if you mention the sample or sample size of your study, you have to mention the yardstick or the parameter or the formula you used to determine the sample size. Is it Yemen's formula or is it power analysis? This power analysis is usually used where you don't have the finite population. That's why I say in sciences. This is not common in social sciences and education. Is it Cochrane's formula? Which formula did you use to determine the sample size? You state it there. We say that a research must be replicated. A feature, one of the features of research is replicability. So for people to be able to replicate your study, to repeat, they should know the formula or the yardstick you use to determine the sample from the population. Now, if you have different components, as you have mentioned in the population, you have to determine the sample size of each of those components. And you do that using the sample frame. Using the sample frame. How do you calculate it? As you have determined the sample size, just the sample size divided by the entire population. That will give you the sample frame. And it is always in fraction. It cannot be up to 1. If it is up to 1, know that you are making a mistake. It is always in point, fraction. So if it is in fraction, you can now use it to multiply each of the components you have in the population. And that will give you the sample size for each of those components that you said. Maybe experienced farmers and inexperienced farmers, or cashew farmers from plantain farmers. You'll be able to get the sample of each of those components. Now, having said so, having determined the sample size, you can also, if you don't want to use a Yemen formula, there are some ones now that you can easily use. Even if you go online, you can get sample size calculator. You just put, when you Google it, you see where you put your population and then check the errors, put them, the errors, 0.5 and rest of them. It will give you the exact sample. I want you to note that sample size calculator is just a program designed in line with Morgan table. So you can use Morgan table straight, but sample size calculator will give you easy and more accurate job. Now, you can also sometimes where we talk of the participants. That is, participant is in a qualitative study. But in this case, if you are sampling, or if there are groups of a population that you do not want to include, this is where you state the inclusion and the exclusion criteria, what you use to remove others from belonging to this group, before you now go to the sampling. Remember, we said sample and sampling technique. So we have only dealt with sample. Now we are going to sampling technique. If you go to the sampling technique, sampling, first of all, you need to state whether you are using probability sampling or non-probability. In most of our research, we do not mention anything about probability and non-probability. And our research teachers usually teach us this, where they classify those probability sampling and give you types of probability sampling. Non-probability sampling, they also give you types of non-probability sampling. But while we are writing, we usually assume and jump all this. It's very important now that you begin to think about it. Because when you write this way, people know that you understand and can apply all the concepts in research methodology. And that's why I say at the end of this lecture, if you listen to it attentively while taking your note, you will become an expert. You would have been baptized, purified, and initiated into the expert of research methodology. But please, don't forget to like, share for others to benefit, and as well subscribe. Now, when you go to the probability, you have them, and that will guide you, whether it's random, whether it's stratified, whether it's cluster. Then if you are talking about non-probability, are you talking of purposive sampling, confidence sampling, or snowballing? These are, if you know this, it will guide you, and each of them you state what and why are you using that method and how will you use it. Don't forget, I said these three questions will always guide you in each of these components, though not all the components will require that you answer these questions, but most cases, remember. So in this sampling, you must say what sampling technique are you using, what sampling method are you using, why are you using that sampling method, and how will you use it. You may also try to bring out the strengths and the weakness of that chosen method. Bring it out. Very important. Now, after this, if you are doing multi-stage sampling, you need to mention, in the first instance, mention that multi-stage so that people can easily understand it, especially in your abstract. In your abstract, you need to mention the stages that are involved. Example here is stratified proportional simple random sampling. From this, people will know that first of all, you do stratified sampling. The second one, you do proportionate. The third one, you do simple random. And then to get to the individual, you now do simple random again to get to the individuals. This could be that, let's take an example. You want to conduct a study on students in a country. And this country is made up of states. And in each state, we have educational zones. And each of these educational zones, we have schools. And in each of the schools, you are not going to study all the teachers and all the students. You need to sample. This is where this stage comes in, depending on which one you take. So, but in each of them, try to make sure you apply the sample fraction to be able to move from stage 1, you explain what you are doing. Stage 2, you explain what you are doing. Stage 3, you explain what you are doing. Until you get to the respondents. You can also use open AP random number generator. This will help you. Technology has made things very easy and cheap for people to do. I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. The study population consisted of all 1,200 senior secondary school teachers in Lagos State. A sample of 300 was selected using stratified, simple, random to ensure representation across urban and rural districts. You can see here that it's talking about rural and urban. So it's very important you capture how you are going to collect data from rural and urban. These are examples that people normally use. If you watch this example, many things are missing here. One is that there is no component on these students, whether we are talking of senior secondary school male, senior secondary school female, nothing. Where we are talking of male and female, whether we are talking of experienced and inexperienced teachers, they were not mentioned. The subject teachers here were also not mentioned. These are very important that you include them. All the necessary information that you have mentioned, please do include them. We go over to the instrument for data collection. The little experience I have as an editor, a managing editor of some journals is that about 98% of scholars currently are using AI to write their research work. And they use the AI to generate the methodology. I have discovered that AI usually omits instrument for data collection and talk of how the procedure that was used to collect the data without mentioning the instrument. Please, for your research baptism, understand that there is difference between research instrument for data collection and the process or the procedure for data collection. Instrument for data collection, I will give you an example. These are the tools that are used for data collection. Example of this instrument include questionnaire, interview guide, not just interview. Interview is a process, but interview guide is the tool, is the instrument. Observation is a process, is a procedure, but observation checklist is the instrument, which must be developed, validated, and trial-tested before being used. Experimental protocols, tests, digital logs, and even document checklist or protocols have to be. AI usually omit this aspect. I know I am emphasizing this so that as a baptized research expert in methodology, you will be able to validate your methodology. You will be able to pick out what is missing and what should be included. We go to the restart to the structure of the instrument. Otherwise, some people call it instrumentation. If you want to develop the instrument, these are important things that should be included. The number of sections in your instrument. Is it, when we talk of number of sections, are you having 2 sections? You can use part 1 and part 2. If you use part 1 and part 2, maybe part 2 has other subsections. Don't use part A You can use section A, B. Don't use 1 and 2 again to avoid confusing people. If you are using section A and section B, you can now use part 1 and 2 under A or B. Any of them that has other subsections. You either use category, section, parts, and any other word you can use for easy understanding. You need to mention the type of items. Are they questions or are they just phrases? Now, are they measuring scales where you talk of the nominal scale, ordinary scale, interval scale, ratio, or is it Likert scale? You need to mention the type of scale that you are using. You also need to mention how you developed that study. Was the instrument developed by you, or you are adopting or adapting the instrument? If it was developed by you, from where did you develop it? Very important you mention how you develop the instrument. If you are adapting it, you mention. If it is pilot testing, you need to see how the instrument was pilot tested. Supposing you are adapting, you are using someone's instrument. So what you need to include in the instrument, as we have said, is that you mention the name of the instrument, you give it a title, give it a name. A lot of people use the title of their project. No. The title of your research work is not the title of your instrument. You can pick important words there and arrange them without putting any preposition or, if possible for you, rearrange them. There is no pattern for now that you can use. It's a matter of exchanging the words so that it makes meaning for you. But avoid just copying the title of your work and putting questionnaire or interview guide at the end. It's not a good practice. So try to rearrange the words that it will make meaning to you, so that that instrument will be named that way. Nobody will give it a name for you. So you need to give it a name. You need to state who developed it, whether developed by you, and where did you develop it, whether from literature or from experience. If you give it a name, try to give it an acronym so that you can be using the acronym consistently or down the lane while you discuss it. In terms of components, I have described that where you have the demographics and other ones. And I've given an example where you use those things. We normally miss the response options. Please include the response options and the nature of the scale or the nature of the response option. We have unipolar and bipolar. If it is one-sided, where we say highly required, moderately required, required and not required, that is unipolar. But if you are using strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree, that is bipolar. You have the two strong poles by the end. Are they close-ended or open-ended question? You need to mention this. So, the respondents of the instrument should also be mentioned. Now we go over to validation. When you finish developing your instrument, after being seen by your supervisor or by the other fellow researchers, supposing you are conducting the study in a group, after others have seen it, you now go into validation, trying to ascertain that the instrument will actually measure what it's supposed to measure. In this case, you are going to state the type of validation you are going to do. Is it content validation, where the expert review it? Or is it construct validity, just the theoretical alignment, the structure of what you have done? Or is it the criterion validity, where you compare it with an established standard or measure? Where you talk of a test, people will look at whether this actually covered the what you said is called to cover, maybe the curriculum or whatever, or whether it fits the standard. You need to measure the type of validation you are doing. Now, you also need to measure the number of experts that you use. Are you using DeFi model? Are you using a team of experts? Are you just sending it to them differently? And if differently, how many are they? And understand that they should always be odd number. 3, 5, 7. I've seen where people use even number. You do not avoid even number because of tally. If you have an item that 2 persons said delete, and the other 2 says maybe remain silent about that, how are you going to do it if you are using 4? That's why we normally avoid even number. It's always odd number so that there won't be any tally. Whereby a situation whereby 2 persons say delete, and you look at it very well, if the others kept silent, you are now at the liberty of making a choice. So, now we go over to still under validation. You need to state what, when you gave it to the experts, what did you actually ask them to do? You also need to include what actually happened on the instrument. Was there any item mortality? Did they delete some items? Did they kill them? Or did they increase the number of the items? Or did they reward them? Or did they rearrange the structure? What was the grammatical evaluation or investigation done to it? You need to include all these things if you are writing your project in the university. If it is article for publication, you may not include it, but it's very important you know it, that you are running short of space, not that you do not know it. That's why we are talking of this research baptism. Very important for even the presenter, because the presenter may not always remember all this, but with this, he will be able to improve on his writing. The next one is reliability. This reliability, remember, our concentration is on quantitative study. If it is qualitative study, we may not be talking of reliability here. So, in reliability testing, what are you looking for? Is it the internal consistency of the questionnaire items? This is a mistake that many people make. It's not the internal consistency of the instrument. No, of the questionnaire items, of the items in the instrument. The main component that will be used to answer your research questions. Are you using test, retest reliability? Are you using inter-rater reliability? Probably for qualitative coding. If that's what you are using, you should be able to know when you do it. If it is a quantitative instrument, you can do that before going to the field. And if you did not go to the field, this one is not common, but understand that we have it. We have what is called post-test reliability or post-reliability. After you have used the instrument to collect data, you can take part of the data you collected and test the reliability. We call it post hoc test, post hoc test, reliability test. So you are testing after you have collected data, just to know, because you need to establish the reliability of that instrument. Meanwhile, you are advised to test the reliability of your quantitative instruments before going to the field, so that you establish whether that instrument is reliable or not. So in this aspect, you need to state where did you conduct the reliability test, on who and why. Do they have similar experience, or are they in the same practicing field? And how many of them did you test it on? People are recommended that you don't test depending on the population. You do not test reliability on people or subjects less than 25, depending. So, but that is the recommended number. You can also Google to get the citations to support the number you are using. If you collect such data from that number, remember we have said, where are you testing the reliability, on who, and why are you doing that? How many of them? And then what is the statistical tool that you are going to use to now compute the data you have collected in order to quantize it and be able to now judge whether it is valuable, reliable or not reliable, whether it is highly reliable, moderately reliable, or lowly reliable. We normally do not judge. We just say we collected data giving this reliability index or reliability coefficient. We need to interpret that coefficient. And you don't just interpret it, you need to use an authority to back up your interpretation. Do not forget it. We move to the method of data collection, the procedure. And this provides step-by-step of how you conduct your study. It provides a step-by-step account of how you gathered your data. Now, first of all, you need to state what type of data. We missed this. Most of our projects, we do not include it. Is it primary data or secondary data? Those who taught us research, they did not make mistake. They taught us the meaning of primary data and secondary data. So you need to mention whether you are going to collect primary data or secondary data, and why. Don't forget why before we move to how. Do not forget it. So when you state this, you now need to state the number of the copies distributed or administered. I want us to understand something here. There is difference between questionnaire distribution and questionnaire administration. When you take a questionnaire to a respondent and give it to the person, you have distributed it to the person. You have not administered it. Administration has to do with time, with space, at the actual point that the person is responding to that instrument. If you give it to the person and the person checks it on his or her own, that is self-administered questionnaire. If you go there and the person, maybe due to level of education or language or whatever reason, you are the person now explaining to the person, for the person to take decision and tell you, you check it. Remember, we don't tick. We check those boxes. So in most of our projects, we write tick. No, it's not tick. It's check. If you are the one checking those points, understand that it is researcher-administered questionnaire. You need to know this. Now, I just want you to know that. Don't forget it. When you are talking of distribution and when you are talking of administration, there are two different things. Now, when we move to the distribution, in most cases, we use research assistants. You need to mention how many research assistants you used. Normally, if you have different states or different zones or different districts or different regions, you select based on those regions. If it is 3, you can select 3. If it is 4, you can select 7, depending, provided you know the coverage, because you cannot be saying, I want to select 4 for each of them, whereas all of them will not cover the same number of respondents. So that one is left for you to decide. There is word we normally use. Sometimes we say trained. If you train, you say you train the research assistant, it is expected that you provide the manual for training. This is research. You don't just come and say anything you like. Whatever you do is subject to verification, is subject to replication. You rather say you briefed or instructed them or even educated them rather than training. Before we move, we will also have to before we move over to the other ones, very important thing is here. Even though we have not gone down to that place, but I want you to note, because most of our projects, we do not wait till the aspect of ethical clearance or ethical considerations. Some of our projects, we have built in the ethical issues in our method of data collection. So at this point, you must indicate how you gain the permission, how you train the research assistant, or how you secure the materials if need be. How did you contact these respondents? In quantitative study, we say respondents. In qualitative study, we say participants. Do not mix these two issues. That's why we are baptizing you if you are listening to us. Remember that we are baptizing you does not mean that you are better than you. No. I'm sorry. Even if you remember John the Baptist baptized Jesus Christ. But that does not mean that John the Baptist was greater than Jesus Christ. He just had to do what he should do. I'm just doing what I should do. I hope you understand me. Now, in contacting the participants, did you use invitation letter, or did you use emails, or did you use phone? Or how did you contact them? You need to explain. There's nothing like jumping the gun. Do not assume. How did you obtain their consent? What are the sequence of activities that take place? What was your mode of administration? Was it face-to-face? Was it online? Or was it through the telephone or post? Though we are not longer talking about post these days. But very important, you mention the mood, your mode of administration. I've said the difference between distribution and administration. So in this mode of administration, you need to mention what you used. Then, certainly, I laugh at people. I'm not perfecting you to be a criminal. No, in academics. Understand that falsification, fabrication, and there are 3 words there that they use: plagiarism, falsification of data, fabrication of data, and one other words is an academic theft. is a serious issue. If I finish without telling you that, and especially these methodologies where people run into problem. That's why we have taken it to see if we can break it and simplify it. And at this point, I want to let you know that so many people will go and say they collected data and say they collected 100%. Very, very difficult for you to collect 100%. Those who have done study, actual study, will know what I'm talking about. You cannot. Very, very difficult. And if you said you administered more than, you cannot administer, if you want 80 persons, you cannot administer 85 to collect 80. It's not possible. That is not research. If you do that, you must state how we are going to remove, should there be 81, how we are going to remove 1. Otherwise, your research will be biased. So you need to show efforts, measures you took to increase the retrieval rate. Measures you took to increase your retrieval rate. Did you double dip? Or what? What did you do? What are those things that you did to ensure that you increase your retrieval rate? State them. There's nothing you are hiding if it is your undergraduate, your master's or PhD research work. Be as brief and as detailed as you can. Don't waste words. Go straight to give. Every sentence should have a unique information. Every sentence should have a unique information. No repetition. You need to state the number of copies retrieved from the distributed or administered questionnaire. Very, very important. And when you state the number, you calculate the percentage. No longer the percentage of the retrieved from the population. No. It is from the sample. And that it was the sample, the number of samples that you administered. So calculate the percentage, the retrieval percentage, based on the number administered. And you state it there. Then you go further to state whether this number is enough to be used. You need an authority to back it up. You need an authority. If it is 80% retrieval rate or 90%, you need an authority who stated whether that is okay or not. Before you now finally state the period that you collected the data. We usually miss this point. We don't write the time it took or the time interval, how many days, how many weeks, how many months, and the period, the exact calendar that you collected the data. For us, maybe educationists, educators in the classroom, it may not be very important for us, but it's needed. It's seriously needed in most of the areas like medicine or even agriculture. Those who deal with farmers, they need to state the calendar. They may collect data in rainy season, so they need to state it when they collect, which month, so that someone who may replicate the study, we know when they collected data and where they collected data. If you are collecting data, maybe, for example now, during dry season, you may find out that most of the farmers are at home. So the data may have been collected there at home. But if it's during rainy season, you may find out that you may have to meet the farmers in the farm to collect data from them. Otherwise, when they come back in the evening or the early morning before they leave, they may not have time to attend to you. That's why it's very important you state the period of the year should there be any replication. The challenges you face during data collection and how they were managed, they are very important, but that could come in limitations of the study. Now, the next is data analysis. In data analysis, you do what is called data cleaning. We don't normally talk of data cleaning, but first of all, the first thing you do after collating your data, after queuing your data in, or the preparation is data cleaning. You clean your data. After cleaning, you treat your data. There's what we call treatment of missing data. Supposing you have Excel sheet and you are cleaning your data, coming to some questionnaire items, some of them are omitted, some are jumped. How do you do it? How do you refill it? Anything you do in research must be systematic, and there must be a reason for doing it. You don't just do it because you like it. Something must guide you to do it. Now, if you are in Excel sheet, you can either join depending on how the row is going. You can do vertical treatment, or you can do horizontal treatment. If the rows that they are connected is horizontal, you get the data before the missing point, you get the data after the missing point, add two of them and divide by 2 to get the center. You can do it vertically, you can do it horizontally, depending on where the answer treats your work. Most of us don't treat. We just go ahead to do it. Statistical instrument for data analysis or data computation. Let me correct one thing here. Statistical instrument for data analysis or data computation. There is difference between data analysis and data computation. When you are using Excel or SPSS, those are programs, and you use them, if you can call them statistical analysis, but you use them for computation. So they are used for data computation. What you use to analyze your data is the mean, the center of tendency, the frequencies. All those things are the statistical analysis that you use for analysis to say, okay, because there are 20%, because 10% of them failed, probably the teacher didn't teach well. Then the next thing is your benchmark. The benchmark for your decision making. Always include the benchmark. If it is 5-point rating scale or 7-point rating scale, some say it's not Likert scale. I want to remind those who may be arguing that Likert has been modified. All these new technologies, they have put it even in Excel and Monkey Survey and rest of them. They can produce it to 8, 7, 6 Likert. But if you say it must be the first one, not a problem. Understand that Bloom's taxonomy has also been modified by his student, Benjamin Bloom. His student has modified his taxonomy. So we should understand when we are talking of modification. So you need to state the benchmark for your data analysis. If it is testing hypothesis, is it at 0.1 probability, or is it at 0.5? This is what we call decision making. You state it in chapter 3. That will guide you in chapter 4. Remember I said this chapter 3 connects, is at the center, and it connects chapter 2, 1, 2 to 4, 5, and 6 in some cases. Now, how did you manage your data? If you are writing for research grant, this is very, very important. How are you going to manage your data? Data storage, method of data archiving, and discarding. How many years will it stay before you discard the data? Very important you mention them. Very, very important. Do not forget. I've said it. If you after treatment of data missing, you have all this that you can use to analyze. We call it quantitative analysis, where you use descriptive statistics, the mean, the median, the mode, the standard deviation, percentage, and rest of them. If it is inferential statistics, we are talking of the t-test, the ANOVA, analysis of variance, the regression, the chi-square, and all that. Then we will talk of the statistical package, which you use to compute the data. Know that it is not to test, it is not to analyze, it is to compute. Something like the Excel, something like the SPSS, the R, the Stata, and rest of them. We said this is mainly for quantitative, but if it is for qualitative, you can take this advantage when we talk about the thematic analysis, the grounded theory, the content analysis, the discourse analysis, coding process, software used like Vivo, Atlas, and all that. So, no. And you can, when you are talking of a mixed method or mixed method integration, you still use any of them, and at the end you triangulate your study. So these are the things. Then the next one is the ethical consideration. This is not common in most of our universities then, but these days it has come to be, because no research grant will be awarded or given to you without showing the ethical considerations. This is where you show how you conducted your study responsibly. And that will include approval from relevant ethical committees, approval from relevant bodies, approval from relevant bodies. Yes. You need to get it. And not just getting it, you need to attach the reference number if available. I was in my school human subject research ethics committee. So each of the research we cleared for, and we gave ethical clearance, we usually issue a number which bears the number of the application and then the year and the school from which it's coming from. So this is very important. You also talk of the informed consent. How did you get informed consent from the participant or the respondent? Was it written or was it verbal? Normally choose written for documentation, and that should be your instrument. You also talk of the privacy of the respondent or the participant. What measure did you use to protect them from being known? The anonymization of those respondents. In the data collected, did you password to protect the file so that another person wouldn't tamper with it? You know, there are some places you may not enter in this world that are not easily accessible. There are some places you may not enter. Due to certain information, they have to be protected. But we just see our information that they have to go. So there are some libraries that you are not allowed to enter. Even if you enter there, everything is password protected, that you cannot access information. Did you include the right of the participant to withdraw at every point in time? Do they have the right to withdraw without being penalized at the point of the research? Both entering, middle, and at the end? How did you avoid harming them? Physically, emotionally, and by reputation. These things supposed to come under ethical consideration. You need to state them, how you took care of. Remember, I said what, why, and how. This place you need to state how you were able to ensure that this. If it is in South Africa, at least the university I know, one of the universities I know, you will explain any of this. If it is informed consent, you need to explain what is informed consent. Why is informed consent important? And how did you achieve it? So, as we are going, we have talked about the data protection measure. According to the local and international law, you need to know that. Then the use of plagiarism, the plagiarism. How did you exonerate your study from plagiarism? If you use the AI, you need to declare what you used AI to do and which AI you used. You need to cite. And lastly, of this aspect is the limitation of the methodology. We're not talking of the limitation of the study, but understand that most of the limitations of the study are from the methodology. Most limitations of the study usually come from the methodology. So at this point, you need to acknowledge the methodological weakness, honestly. Those ones that you could not do, you have to explain what effort you made. But be sure that not all constraints or challenges in your study will be overcome. So what constraints did you have in terms of time, in terms of budget, in terms of scope? What of the sampling error, the sample limitation? Every study that you conducted a sample, you didn't use the entire study, has a sample error. Go and understand what is sample error. If the population of the study is 1,000 and you are to collect data from 1,000, you decided to use 700 even. If you find out from that study, when you collect the entire data and calculate it, if the result is to be 3.7, let's say mean, and by the time you collect all of them, it's going to be 3.68 or 6 or 3.73 or 8 even. The difference that exists between the sample you collected and the entire population is what we call sample error. That's the first sample error. There may be other aspects of it. By the time you study it, you see how errors can come when we are talking of sampling error. We have sampling limitations. The samples not fully representative. This one is also another aspect of sample error. So, but as far as you are not using the entire population, accommodate that there's a sample error because you do not know if the result could be the same if you use the entire population. Excuse me. We talk of the possible bias sources like self-reporting, research subjectivity. Sometimes your personal observation or perception might interfere with the result if you are the one reporting, if you are the one doing the interpretation, especially in the qualitative study. Then the effects of these limitations on your result, you need to declare all these limitations. Did it actually have to tamper with the result? Yes or no? You need to state it. So with that, I think if you listen to this and they're able to capture in each of them, you're able to capture what this covered. I think your research methodology or the method you use in your research will not be rejected or will not be queried much, meaning that at least you have scored nothing less than 80 to 90 of 100, if not 100%. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Wait for our next video on research baptism, research methodology, volume 2, which will be on qualitative study. Thank you and God bless you.